Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Post with BP. I'm your host, Billy Parvatam. Folks, I'm so excited today to be joined by my friend Stephen Newman, a technical writer. He writes professionally and also on the side for Dulles District by BT alumni Dave Scarangella, who made that website. He's a big DC sports fan and, like me, an alum of Virginia Tech, class of 2018, and big Nats fan as well. It seems like he comes on every year for this opening day preview, MLB season preview podcast, and so glad to have him back on the pod. Steven, how you doing? It's great to have you back.
Doing great, man. Always happy to be back. Get to chop it up about DC sports and some Hokies.
Yeah, well, let's get right to it, Steven. We got to cue John Fogerty center field because opening day is tomorrow. MLB kicks off a season. Technically, already did last week because you had the Dodgers and Padres kick off the two-game series in Seoul, South Korea. But of course, in America, opening day is tomorrow, and we have to talk about our favorite team. If you can see it, go Nationals, Natitude. The Washington Nationals start opening day, the 2024 season tomorrow, 4:10 p.m. first pitch Eastern at Cincinnati. Their home opener will be on Monday. Steven, 2023, the Nats went 71 and 91. 16-game improvement, actually, from 2022. Unfortunately, on the negative side, they finished last in the division for the third straight season. They have not made the playoffs since 2019. Of course, the great World Series championship run. And as we talked about on previous podcasts that you've been on, the stars of 2019 are long gone. Max Scherzer, Juan Soto traded, Trey Turner traded, Steven Strasburg's hurt. That's a whole other conversation we could get to here. And guys like Ryan Zimmerman, Mr. National, is retired. So a lot of new faces on this team. Of course, some returners that we think will be cornerstones in terms of maybe stars going down the road, and some new guys penciling in. And that's where I wanted to go to first, Steven. Let's talk about the projected Nats starting lineup. So what I'll do here is I'll kind of read what some of the projections are, and you can from there kind of give your analysis and what do you think of how that lineup will look. So the projected 2024 lineup that I saw was you'd have C.J. Abrams at shortstop, Lane Thomas in the outfield, Jesse Winker, a free agent acquisition. He's in the outfield. Joey Meneses DHing, Joey Gallo, another free agent acquisition at first base. Keibert Ruiz at catcher, Nick Senzel at third base, Luis Garcia at second base, and you have Victor Robles in the outfield. So you look at that lineup, Steven, what do you think, and what stands out?
Yeah, it's pretty much how it's looking. Just the top really is kind of what stands out. You saw C.J. Abrams, especially the second half of last year, really took off at the plate and especially on the bases, stealing bases left and right. So that's definitely it's probably the most intriguing player in the lineup right now. Most electric guy, kind of across the board. Cornerstone at shortstop there as well, and also Lane Thomas had a 2020 season, over 20 homers, 20 steals. Be interesting to see if he can replicate that, maybe even take the next step, or if there is a little bit of regression. You saw the second half of last year, he did kind of tail off a little bit, but yeah, just seeing if he can bounce back, continue that type of season he had last year, and also if he can be like you were talking, a bit more of a cornerstone going forward too, because I'm sure we'll get to it. But there are some big names in the outfield coming up through the minor leagues that could debut maybe sometime this season. So just seeing if Thomas can maybe remain a piece moving forward, or maybe becomes a trade chip down the road, anything along those lines. But I mean, either case, the more he can do for himself, he'll just be helping himself, whether it's here or somewhere else. Um, Aside from that, there's some other guys that are interesting in their own ways. Some new, some that have been around a little bit. Like Luis Garcia, I know has gotten a lot of talk this spring, and it hasn't all been great. Um, he was up until down to the wire. Really seemed like he was competing to even keep his job. They had another guy, Trey Lipscomb, from the minor leagues, was definitely pushing him. There's a bit of a groundswell for him to be the guy that made the team and start at second base, just given just how he was performing. But yeah, Garcia's still around. Interesting to see if he can put some of those issues he was having this spring and at times in past seasons as well behind him. But he is a younger guy, former decently highly rated prospect too. So see if he can maybe take that next step as well. Caber Ruiz, same kind of deal. I know they've been working a lot with him behind the plate, especially just kind of reworking his form just because he was, I mean, statistically speaking, and I don't know how much those things can be trusted, but yeah, defensively, he was among, if not like the worst catcher in the big leagues last year, just behind the plate. So reworking just his footwork and things like that behind the plate. I know he's catching from one knee now, I think. But so things like that, but also at the plate, if he can start showing more power, just getting on base a bit more too. Then you got guys, Joey Meneses, whether he's what is he exactly? Is he what he was last year as a average-ish hitter, or like the last couple months he had the year prior, where he was really hitting like one of the best hitters in the league, or probably somewhere in between. Then you get guys like Joey Gallo, Mr. Three True Outcomes in Major League Baseball. It's all homers, walks, and strikeouts. And this spring, especially, it was a whole lot of strikeouts and not a lot else. So we'll see how that goes. He also doesn't have a ton of experience at first base. I thought that was actually really interesting that especially once they started adding more outfielders, like you talked about Jesse Winker, also Eddie Rosario. He's got some experience with the Braves recently, and then the Twins prior to that. Um, just interested to see. I mean, obviously Gallo at the plate, but also at first base. Like he's won a couple Gold Gloves in left field, so a little interesting that they went out, added more outfielders instead of letting him stay out there where he's played well, as opposed to, I mean, a spot where he's got like less than a season's worth of big league experience, I think. And then third base, Nick Senzel. We'll see where that goes. Not a whole lot of upside there. Kind of feels like just another one of those placeholders. Like, I mean, Jammer Candelario was last year too, though. So, and you see how that went. He actually hit really well. Wound up getting some solid prospects in return for him. Um, but yeah, definitely the top two guys I would say are what's the most intriguing, Abrams and Thomas. And then from there, it's kind of can guys bounce back and either recoup some trade value, whether it's a Winker, maybe even Meneses, Rosario, guys like that. And then the other guys, obviously Ruiz is staying around for a while as the catcher. He's locked up for nearly a decade to come. But also a Luis Garcia, guys like that, if they can kind of take the next step and prove that they're a piece going forward, or if not, or if other guys like Trey Lipscomb probably be up before too long. James Wood will probably get into that too. But yeah, off the top, top couple guys are exciting, and after that, we'll kind of just see.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you about that. I mean, we've talked about this in the last couple of podcasts. How if you had to pick "quote unquote" a face of the franchise right now, you may just go with Keibert Ruiz by default because he signed a 8-year, $50 million extension to stay with the Nats. Of course, C.J. Abrams has to figure in that he was second in the NL in stolen bases behind Ronald Acuna Jr., who ended up winning the MVP last year. So, what kind of numbers, Steven, do you have to see from guys like C.J. Abrams and Keibert Ruiz to really cement themselves as the faces of the franchise?
I'd say for Abrams, I mean, the obvious answer is just if he could repeat the second half of last year. But I would say, I mean, if he could be even, I mean, frankly, even like a 270 hitter, I mean, get on base at above a 300 clip. I mean, even that alone, like you'd be talking 50 plus stolen bases, it feels like. And we'll see with the power. He did start to tap into some better power potential too. I mean, I see no reason why he couldn't be a 20 home run guy. We kind of saw the second half of last year again, like that started to emerge. You didn't know if that'd be as much a part of his game, but I mean, if he can be a 20 home run guy, get on base or hit for say a 270, 280 average, like I said, get to around like a three, I mean, ideally like a 320 on base clip. Like, I mean, this guy's kind of the limit there. And it will be interesting too to see. So that's part of it too. So they don't have Dominic Smith at first base anymore. You've got a pretty raw first baseman there. So kind of what's it look like defensively too? Because you'd see a good bit last year even. Smith would kind of bail him out a little bit. And now that he doesn't have that to fall back on. He kind of just has to continue to grow defensively there. Obviously, he's got great range. His speed plays into that. Um, but yeah, just seeing him have another strong season defensively, and then kind of keep going, just improving as a hitter, hit more a bit more consistently, and some of that power again. But yeah, I mean, he of the two you said versus like Kibber Ruiz, I think Abrams is. I mean, the ceiling's higher. Um, as far as Ruiz goes, I mean, similar at the plate. If he can be a bit more consistent, hitting that 270, 280 range above 300 on base. And then same deal. Like I think he could be easily be a 20 home run guy too, I think. And then I mean, it's just defensively. That's kind of the biggest thing. That's just huge at catcher too. And we'll kind of see down the road if if we keep moving towards the whole robo ump type of thing, as opposed to uh, where pitch framing matters as much as it is now. And if that goes away, then maybe the defensive side starts to matter a little less. But yeah, I mean, again, like 270, 280 hitter, 20, 25 homers. That's not out of the question, I don't think. But it's you just kind of want to see if you can keep trending in that direction. But yeah, to your initial question, I'd say it's starting to feel more like and obviously it could change with prospects that are coming. But as of right now, of the two, I'd say Abrams to me feels like more of the face of the franchise type. But I mean, we'll see how this year goes. Maybe if Abrams can even become like an all-star type guy at shortstop, because again, like he's stealing as many bases as anybody. If he can be a 20 homer, 270 hitter type of guy, like that sounds like an all-star to me. But I mean, we'll see. That'll be interesting once things get going here to see yeah, just how he fares if he can continue what he was doing last year.
And I have to ask you, Stephen, maybe the number one question on every Nats fan's mind is when can we expect to see all these big name guys? I mean, I just named a few. I'll name a few right here: Dylan Cruz, James Wood, Brady House, Cade Cavalli. I mean, let's just start with those guys, and you can add, Trey Lipscomb, anyone you want to add. When can we expect to see those guys in the big leagues?
It's an interesting question, especially in the outfield, because they did add a few veteran guys like the Jesse Winker, Eddie Rosario. Like those guys, they'll be playing, if not every day, close to it. And you've got your Victor Robles, Lane Thomas. So there's not an opening right now. So I mean, in part it depends on how Wood's doing. Obviously, like if he had a great spring training. I mean, statistically was like arguably the best hitter in all of spring training, like across the league. So I feel like he's pretty much done his part. But if he goes up to AAA, kind of continues that, he probably forces his hand, and you could see him even. I mean, I would say June, but maybe even May. And then obviously, again, like it depends on what the veterans do. If you have a guy that gets out to a Corey Dickerson type of start, then you'll see James Wood early. Plus, like there is incentive now to guys winning Rookie of the Year or something like that. You get draft pick compensation on that. So if they're seeing Wood get out to that kind of start and somebody really be slow out of the gate, you could easily see James Wood, I think, by May. Cruz, I think Dylan Cruz will be a little further out. I mean, he hasn't played a full pro season yet. He played for like a month or two in the minors. So I mean, there's no rush. But obviously with Cruz, like that's another guy. That's I mean, we all saw whether it's at LSU, who's obviously the number 2 pick in the draft. There's a ton of potential there. I wouldn't get too discouraged if it takes him a little longer, if it takes till like September for him to debut. I mean, again, that'd be like a season of pro ball to get to the big leagues. Like that's really quick. But even this spring training, like Cruz, he hit pretty well. He did have some really impressive looking plays out there in the outfield as well. I mean, I would say he's probably a little further out. You probably won't see him, I don't think, until like after the trade deadline. But we'll see. If he gets off to a hot start, same deal as with Wood, although I don't think as early, but he could force their hand and get up a little sooner too. Brady House, a little further out, I think. Part of the deal with him too is just proving that he can stay healthy. Especially his, I guess, first full season of pro ball. He just had a lot of injury issues. It's what forced him over to third base. And even secondarily, now that they've got Trey Lipscomb on his way up, he is a natural, really a natural third baseman that kind of converted him to second, just because that's probably where he'll have to play. But I mean, he's going to get up to the big league sooner, Lipscomb, I think, because he'll be starting in AAA, whereas I think House will be in AA. I don't know if that's official yet, but so I mean, we'll see how things play out. But I'd say House may debut this year. We'll see. It might take till 2025 with him, and then Cavalli. It mostly depends. Um, I mean, on health, really. I've seen he's hoping to be back by June. I'm thinking it'll probably be July, and that probably won't even be at the big league level. So we're probably talking I would say probably the August, September timeframe that he gets back to. But especially with him, once he's back, like the starting rotation, I mean, there'll be a lot of young guys with some real talent. Obviously, you've got Gray and Gore already. Jake Irvin pitched really well last year too. You got Jackson Rutledge, who's probably if Trevor Williams gets off to a slow start, Rutledge could be up really quick. I think he already debuted last year. But yeah, I mean, I've talked about Lipscomb a bunch just because he's whether it's Senzel even at third or obviously Garcia at second, like any struggles they have there, anybody gets hurt, whatever, that's going to be the guy you see. He had a great spring. Robert Hassel too. You didn't mention him, but he also so he did miss a little bit of time in spring training this year, but was hitting really well. He's a funny one because even going back to when they got him in the trade for Juan Soto, the talk was kind of he may have not had the most ceiling in that package, the highest ceiling, but he was, especially compared to Wood, but maybe out of anyone, was like the most surefire guy to just be a solid big leaguer. And ever since they got him, he just hadn't produced super great. Part of that is because he had a hamate bone injury. I would have been, I guess, I think in 2022. It affected last year. Like he didn't hit very well last year, and a lot of it was probably because of that. But yeah, no, this spring he was hitting really well. Looked like a completely different hitter. And so that's a guy that I wouldn't be surprised if you see at some point this year as well. Another outfielder there. It ties into my point about Lane Thomas. It's a big year for him to prove that he can be a productive player, or else he might just be on the way out after this year. But we'll see where that goes. So yeah, I would include Hassel in that group too, of guys that we could see this year with some major potential. But there are a lot of guys. You talked even the left-handed pitcher DJ Hers that they got for Candelario from Chicago last year. That's another guy that whether it's as a starter at some point this year, could just be as a reliever because that's a whole separate issue. But the Nats just never have left-handed relievers, so there could be a need for that. Yeah, there's just a lot of guys right now. That's going to be the exciting thing about this year, I think, is whether I don't know how soon they'll all be, but at some point there are going to be a lot of guys I think that get up to the majors, and it'll just give a real interesting look into the future, 2025 and beyond. But that to me is where the intrigue is. So I'm glad we talked about that because that's what Nats fans have, I think, to really be looking forward to. But yeah. I think Wood, though, to your point, could be really quick. Could be May, June that he's up. And I mean, the dude's it's amazing what he's able to do. Like at 6'7", 240 or whatever it is. He can play a legitimate center field, can steal bases. It's really fast too. There's video that I'd seen on Twitter, I guess X now, but of him just running down the bases. Like there was one specific play I think on a ground ball where he ran like as fast as I think like Corbin Carroll, who can move. So at 6'7", with the power that he has, like get ready because it'll be exciting. It'll be a human highlight. like anytime he's out there, almost a Bryce Harper type, which we haven't seen. I mean, obviously since Bryce left, but well, Soto, but different. Um, yeah, that'll be fun. It'll be at some point this year, and those guys come up. It'll be really fun for Nats fans. So yeah, get ready because it'll be fun.
Well, let's talk also about the pitching rotation now, the starting rotation first. You mentioned some of those guys earlier, but you've got, of course, Josiah Gray, who's the opening day starter. Actually, Steven, I didn't know this until
Mhm.
today. He is the first black pitcher to start opening day for the Nationals. I mean, what, they've been around since 2005, though, so that's 19 years. I mean, that's a pretty significant moment. You've got Mackenzie Gore, the left-hander. He's going to be the home starter. You've got the veteran Patrick Corbin, and I think if I'm not mistaken, Steven, I think it's Patrick Corbin, Tanner Rainey, and Victor Robles, the three guys still on the team from that 2019 World Series team. You've got Jake Irvin and you've got Jackson Rutledge. Maybe Trevor Williams ends up getting that fifth spot. So obviously, you look at it, Steven, it's really Mackenzie Gore and Josiah Gray, who was the Nats' lone all-star last year. So they're going to be that 1-2 punch for the foreseeable future. What do they have to do to kind of, like we talked about with Abrams and Ruiz, continue to improve so that they can really be that bona fide 1-2 punch in the rotation?
Yeah, I think with both of them, it's really consistency. They kind of had a similar issue last year, at a basic level, where like I feel like they both started their seasons really well, especially Gray. Like that's how he became an all-star. And then once we got to like the July, August time frame, they started to struggle a little bit just because, I mean, especially with Gore, but even Gray a little bit. Like they just haven't seen the big leagues a whole lot yet. Like Gore hasn't, especially hasn't pitched that deep into a season at all yet, so it was kind of expected. But now that they've kind of gotten more, just more innings under them in a season, I think that next step would basically just be, I mean, improving in that area, just being able to go the length of the season without having that dip, especially given like once the Nats are a legitimately competitive team and you start talking about playoffs a little bit, being able to pitch well that deep in the season starts to mean so much more. So that's a big thing. Also with Gore, a little bit with both of them actually, because even Gray started having some issues with walks a little bit last year. I think his strikeouts went down a little too, and that's the thing with Mackenzie Gore too. Like he's got a lot of potential, but sometimes I mean he just throws too many non-competitive pitches. Like he'll get there, I think, but that's definitely an area for growth with him too. Neither of them had big issues with giving up home runs last year, though, so that was good to see. Because especially with Gray, his first couple of years, that had been a big issue, and that didn't show up last year. So if that continues, bring down the walks a little bit, and then just yeah, I mean, be able to go the full 162, I'd say would kind of be the biggest things. If you can get both of them around or especially even under like a 4 ERA, that's when we can start having conversations about them being like true, um, more frontline starting pitchers, and really look at them as yeah, just look at them as frontline starting pitchers as opposed to feeling like you need to need to like sign a starter or two in free agency down the road. Because I mean, let's face it, at some point the Nats are going to need to spend money. I know they haven't been doing that the past few years, but that is something that if they want to really be competitive, it's going to have to happen. But you do also want to at least fill some of those holes so you can know that there are some areas where they don't have to do that. So, but yeah, there are going to be a lot of young pitchers though that kind of start factoring in that. We talked Cavalli, but also others, whether it's Rutledge. They'll probably at some point, maybe it's this year or something, they'll draft a pitch or two, and then you start really filling out that rotation. But yeah, I would say the biggest things would be limiting the walks. Yeah, just staying healthy, going a full season. Um, you saw that with Jake Irvin too. Actually, his last few starts, he really started to struggle too. So yeah, it's kind of that same issue I'd say with all those guys like that.
And you look at the bullpen, Steven. I mean, I was looking at a lot of familiar names. You've got Kyle Finnegan, who I'm surprised he hasn't been traded yet. I mean, here's a guy that probably the last two deadlines you probably should have dealt him for some sort of prospects, but he's here, and I think the familiar face, probably likely the closer. You've got Hunter Harvey, you've got Tanner Rainey. I think I'm just excited. If you're gonna ask me one storyline from the bullpen, for him to come back and really try to be where he was for that 2019 team, like just a great arm with a lot of speed out of the bullpen. You've got, of course, Johan Adone. You've got Mason Thompson. So you've got a lot of familiar names, Stephen, in this bullpen that you have to think has to get better with another year together.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree with your point about Finnegan too. I am surprised they haven't traded him, but I mean, especially those two guys, him and Hunter Harvey. That's a pretty solid back of the bullpen. Like it's not exceptional. Like playoff teams are going to do more to like trade for a true closer or something like that, and so sometimes those bullpens look better. But for a team as bad as this one is, like for your eighth and ninth inning guys to be as strong as Harvey and Finnegan is not. It's kind of abnormal. But to your point as well, Tanner Rainey. I'm interested to see how he looks. But yeah, that will be a great story just to see as he's coming back. Really, really to even pitch at all in the big leagues again, just given all the injuries that he's been through lately, is just a great story. But especially if he can become more like what he was in 2019 or even 2020. He was really good too. Yeah, so that could be that trio. If that were to happen, that trio at the back of the bullpen would be pretty strong. Um, and then aside from that, so they will be missing Mason Thompson. I think he had Tommy John surgery, so I don't think will be pitching this year, if I recall. Um, but yeah, no, the bullpen is pretty strong. Matter of fact, I saw a few days ago, I think Fangraphs put out rankings for like just teams across the league, just where they rank in expected, I think, WAR at their position. And I mean, they weren't kind to the Nationals in general, but the bullpen ranked, I think, 14th. Everything else was like 20th or lower, I think. But the bullpen was slightly above average. So it's kind of funny because again, like if uh, bad teams, it's kind of weird for a bad team to be building that way. Like you'd want to be putting together like really strong pieces in other areas, and then you figure out the bullpen later. That's what the Nationals, even when they're good, always kind of used to do. Like they'd have strong lineups, a lot of starting pitching, and then the bullpen would just kind of be what it is, and they'll trade for it down the road. The Nationals right now are very much the opposite. Um, so I mean, we'll see. And there are veterans too now, like Matt Barnes. I know they brought in. He'd been a solid guy. I know for the Red Sox, 5 6 years ago, went back when they were actually a decent team. But a little hit or miss since. But a guy that definitely has seen success, veteran presence, all of that. They got a couple guys like that. So we'll see. Those are guys that you potentially trade down the road too. But yeah, and even they've got prospects too there. Whether it's like a Jose Ferrer or there's actually a guy coming back from Tommy John, a Virginia Tech graduate, Zach Brixey. I know there's a lot of in the diehard Nats fans on social media that there's a lot of guys there that are really interested in seeing how he does. Cole Henry as well is a guy coming off some injuries that's back be full go this year. Was originally a starter, but just because of the injuries, probably can't be more than maybe a 2 inning reliever type. Um, but yeah, we'll see where that goes too. I mentioned DJ Hurst before, might factor into that at some point this year. But yeah, no, the bullpen's pretty strong. Again, Tanner Rainey is kind of the story. And we'll see how they handle guys like Finnegan and Harvey, whether they try to keep them as back the bullpen guys or trade them to try to build up in other areas. But all in all, the bullpen should be pretty solid. But we'll see how that looks as the season goes on, whether they trade any guys, like I said. But yeah, no, the bullpen should be pretty good.
Well, Steven, I have to ask you about an off the field question, which is probably outside of when the prospects are coming up. The biggest topic occupying Nats fans' mind right now and that is what is going on with this Nats ownership situation. I mean, the Lerners, what, a year ago said that they're going to put the team on the market. No, really. I mean, I know the Ted Leonesis of the Capitals and the Wizards was rumored at one point, but really outside of that, no real suitors that were reported out there. And then all of a sudden, a couple weeks ago, the Lerners say that they are no longer actively selling the team. I know a lot of people are not fans of the Lerners. You mentioned that Nats have not spent a lot of money last couple of years, and in order to get back to contention, they will have to spend that much, spend more money, I should say, moving forward. Here's my question for you because, first of all, your overall thoughts. But one thing I want to throw out there is, and I want to be clear, I am no fan of the Lerners. I think it's incredible that the Nats haven't sold, considering the Orioles sold for what 7 million or so, or 7 billion or so, or I'm definitely I'll look up that number. It's not 7 billion because that would be a an NFL team, but 1.7 billion. That's what it was. But I'm just like, man, the Nats. You're talking about baseball in the nation's capital. I think that's a very profitable franchise. So I don't know how the Nats haven't sold. But my thing with the Lerners is, look, yes, they do have to spend money. I'm not disputing that. And like I said, I'm not an overall fan of the Lerners. But haven't they been vindicated in some aspect a little bit? Because you think about it, the Juan Soto trade, I think it's safe to say now the Nats won that trade because we were always talking about it. The earlier in his contract that you trade him, the better prospects you'll get because there's more years that a team will have control over him before he hits the free agent market. The fact that the Padres traded him right before free agency, essentially to the Yankees, shows you that the Nats got better prospects. So I think, especially because the Padres didn't win the World Series, I think it's safe to say now the Nats won the Juan Soto trade. So the Lerners vindicated in that. I mean, really, they didn't give out these contracts. I mean, first of all, Anthony Rendon, you even questioned whether or not he wants to play baseball with all of his comments. The one mistake was Strasburg, but I think we all agree you had to give him that contract. He had just won the World Series MVP, had been a homegrown Nats guy. And then they improved 16 wins over the season. I mean, I hate to toot my own horn here, but on this podcast last year, I said the Nats would win 70 games. They end up winning 71, a 16-game improvement from 2022. So again, I'm no fan of the Lerners. I know that they'll have to change their ways if they want to contend again. But don't you think they deserve some credit here for the way the Nats have improved the last couple of years? And again, if you look at the trades and the contracts, more often than not, they've been proven right. So, look at Scherzer. He's had injury history. Trey Turner's had injury history. So and with this type of play, I mean, you look at it. I don't think his speed is going to last. So I guess a long-winded question, but do you think Lerners have been vindicated in some way with the way some of these things have been played out?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously they get credit for winning the World Series. Like that's never that's definitely that goes in their resume too. So that is a big part of it. And really, like if we're being honest, like once you start, we could play the game of should they have signed some of the guys that they did. Obviously, with Bryce, maybe they should have. With Rendon, I mean, that worked out great. Maybe you shouldn't have signed Strasburg, even a Patrick Corbin. But like now that we're at the point that we're at where the team just is bad, like it's I get why they're not spending a ton. Like it's arguably, I guess, at that point, like it's more important. Like you build up your farm system. You kind of wait to spend until you have some really strong young talent again. Now, obviously, Juan Soto was a really impressive young talent. So maybe we can play that game all we want. But I agree that they, in hindsight, like it does seem like they've won that trade. But I mean, you could make the argument, especially after you trade Soto, that it's kind of just not the right time to be spending anyway. Once some of these prospects come up, and you're talking by next season, maybe you're a little more in that playoff race. Like that's when you should start spending again. So I don't want to say I give them a pass entirely for not spending recently, but I mean I can understand it. Um, so yeah, and I agree too that it is. I was expecting them to sell, whether it's to Ted Leonsis or someone else swoops in. It did feel like we are going that direction, and it's a little bizarre that we didn't get there, especially with a guy like Leonsis, that seemed like the way out of the Nasson deal. Build up the DC sports Um, yeah, but that obviously, like you said, they a couple weeks back they said like they're going to stay. I do think though the Orioles sale is an interesting piece in this. Because obviously now like they have a new owner, so is that a path out of the Masson deal? Like now that you have cheap Angelos there, like not running the show, can you go back, revisit that, and maybe either get some more money out of it or just get out entirely? That's an interesting angle there. Even though so David Rubenstein was I'm trying to remember, was he part of the group that was trying to, or at least reportedly trying to buy the Nats?
I think that's
I
right.
feel like
Yeah, I remember reading
yeah,
that.
yeah. So it is interesting that he's the guy that gets the Orioles, but I do think even on the Nats side there is a potential benefit to that. Not to mention just the mere fact that the Orioles are good now, which will bring in more money. So that you're getting how whatever percentage of that money. So before the Orioles were getting what they were getting because the Nats were good while they were terrible. And we're kind of on the other end of that now. So I mean, complain all you want, but it is helping us a little bit in that sense at least. But yeah, so it's interesting. Like I still feel like there's probably going to be a point where the learners sell. I don't it's off for now. I think it probably gets revisited, but um yeah, just interesting that we didn't actually get there. And the real test though will be like you said, probably I mean next year at this point, whether they start paying for guys in free agency again. I haven't really looked all that deeply into who's set to be a free agent next year, but I think at least anecdotally, the um, the free agent class next year is pretty strong because even a lot of the top guys from this year's class signed either 1 year deals or short deals with an opt out after this season or whatever it may be. So there will be guys to spend on. So that'll really be the test if they yeah I mean if they want to prove that they frankly care about their product that'll be the test.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. But I, not gonna lie, I enjoyed seeing Scott Boras wear it with his clients like Cody Bellinger and Blake Snell signing late, but also for way less than they were asking for. So, no fan of Scott Boras. I think most Nats fans, including you, agree with that. So I was glad to see him wear it. Not gonna lie, but Steven, let's put our money where our mouth is and make predictions. I mean, what do you think this win over under is for this Nationals club? Again, I'm not trying to be out there. But look, the D-backs made the World Series, winning 84 games last year, and the Nats won 71. So again, I'm not saying the Nats are going to make the playoffs, so they're going to go on some crazy run. But I mean, it's not that much of a difference when you talk about 84 wins, 71 wins. So where do you think this Nats team ends up in terms of their record? And I guess a broader picture, where do you think, if it's not this season, which I think we both agree the Nats are not making the playoffs in all likelihood, but where do you see this happening in terms of they will eventually become a playoff contender again? Is it 2025 or is it maybe a few years down the road? Let these young guys develop.
I think that Diamondbacks example is actually a really solid comparison there, especially given there's a lot of at the top like young talent there, whether Corbin Carroll, like we talked about before, or I mean various other guys that are kind of the Diamondbacks got good earlier than we thought they would. Like granted, yeah, they only won 84 games, like you said, but um, they kind of took that next step in the regular season, and especially in the postseason. Like you start getting more experience, and then voila, like these really talented prospects and whatever, they just kind of grow up on the fly. That's the type of thing you could see with a guy like a James Wood, Dylan Cruz, all those guys we talked about. So yeah, I don't think 2025 is an unreasonable timeline to be thinking that a playoff team, and then who knows from there you get hot as those guys just start getting more experience at the big league level. Like maybe you can go on a run, or even like the Rangers last year, like an Evan Carter last year is a great example of a guy that kind of Like he was like a September call up, I think, and then just because of like injuries too. Like I think it was Adolis Garcia got hurt. I could be wrong on that, but and yeah, he just the postseason he just kind of took off. So yeah, that can be a great on the job learning experience for young guys like that. And if they're as talented as we think they are, like who knows? Like they could definitely make some noise as soon as next season, I think. But yeah, I mean, this year, well, we'll see how this year goes. I'm not expecting anything too crazy. Probably not much different than last season. Matter of fact, I think there was a tweet going around within the last few days of asking for like preseason Nats predictions and all that, and I think I actually said 71 and 91, their exact record from last year. Just because last year, to me, like there was some of it, I don't want to say good luck, but like they were good in close games, like better than a team as bad as they were, you would think would be. Like their run differential didn't suggest that they were a 71 win team. And I guess my gut says there's probably some regression on that front, even though I think the product as a whole will probably be a little bit better. Um, but yeah, we'll see. I think they're trending in the right direction. I think 2025 is a reasonable time frame, but be thinking 80 plus wins, maybe be a playoff team, and then anything can happen there. But yeah, no, my initial guess as far as a record is probably about the same as last year. Not to say I don't think they'll be a better team, but some of that, some of it, like I said, was just kind of some luck, um, I mean, just doing better than their run expectancy and run differential suggested. But we'll see. I could be wrong. You beat me last year. Like I wasn't thinking 70 wins, so maybe you're the better person to ask. You might have the better expectation there.
Yeah, I was gonna say one of my favorite moments of 2023, not just talking about baseball season, but the whole year is when Steven tweeted out after the Nats won 70 games. Billy was right, I was wrong, but nah, you were a good sport about it. I'm not gonna go that much more wins than you. I'm gonna go 75 wins. I don't think they have quite enough to be a 500 team, but I'm just gonna be optimistic and say any improvement is good improvement. So I'm gonna say they get a couple more wins, another year of playing together for a lot of these young guys. I'm gonna say 75 wins. So what's the math? I mean, that's 75 and like 57 if I'm not, or 67, something like that if you're doing the math. So yeah, I think we're basically right about the same. I think this team makes improvements this year, but still I think at least a year away from being a playoff team. So great discussion there on the Nationals. We're 45 minutes into the podcast, Steven, and it's time now to move to the MLB overall. A lot of great teams out there, a lot of great storylines, of course, most notably Shohei Ohtani, 10 years and $700 million deal to the Dodgers. Of course, he's kind of in this whole another scandal in and of himself right now with the interpreter and whether or not he was involved in any sort of gambling. Of course, gambling is illegal in California, so that'll be interesting to see. But I thought what we could do here, Steven, is kind of go through each division really quickly and pick our winners and then pick our wild cards, and then we can kind of have a broader discussion. Because the Nationals are in the NL, we'll go with the NL second, and we'll go with the AL first. Let's go to the AL East. Who do you have winning that division?
Yeah, I still think it's the Orioles. They got to 100 games last year, and they added Corbin Burns. They'll have a full season of Gunnar Henderson, or yeah, Gunnar Henderson. They'll at some point this year they'll get Jackson Holiday. I thought it was kind of crazy that he didn't make the opening day roster. That's a separate discussion. But regardless, I think most of the year they'll have him as well. He's a top prospect in baseball. I there's just so much young talent there. They have an actual ace leading their starting rotation now. Um, yeah, like they did it last year and they got better. So I've got to imagine they'll do it again.
I agree with you. I'm going with the Orioles. You talked about it, 101 and 61 last year. I think Adley Rutschman, you can make a case, is the best catcher in all of baseball. You've got Gunnar Henderson, Ced Mullins, I think a guy who has been forgotten about a little bit, but he was on that Team USA, a World Baseball Classic team, so he's no slouch in and of himself. Ryan Mountcastle, Corbin Burns, the bona fide ace that they need. They signed veteran Craig Kimbrell for their bullpen, which I think is going to be huge, especially if Felix Bautista can come back healthy this season. So I agree with you. We are both going with Baltimore there to win the AL East. AL Central, who do you have winning this division? It was notably the weakest division, I think we could both agree last season. The Twins only ended up making the playoffs as the division winner, winning 87 games. Do you think they repeat, or are you going with someone else to win that division?
Yeah, that's always a hard division because I never feel like there's ever a team that's, I mean, more than like a mid 80s win type of team, maybe 90. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I generally lean towards Cleveland. I don't even know that I have a great reason for that. I've just seen it more. You've got a perennial MVP candidate, Jose Ramirez there. Um, the Twins, I think, will be interesting, and there are other teams in the division that are making strides in the right direction with the Royals, the Tigers, the White Sox. I don't know. Like they every year, I kind of get a feeling with them, and then they just disappoint. So I'm not even going to go down that road. But yeah, I guess my gut says Cleveland. They're always at least decent with pitching. They've obviously got their closer, Clase is among the best in the league. You've got Jose Ramirez in a division that's like you said, pretty weak. To me, like my gut says that's probably enough, but yeah, we'll see. Minnesota could go on a run, but I'll go Cleveland.
Yeah, I agree with you. I find myself kind of rooting for Cleveland a lot just because I think, we all know how cursed of a city Cleveland is. And, we all remember that 2016 World Series where it was the battle of 1908 versus 1948. The Guardians hadn't won. The Indians at the time hadn't won a World Series since 48. And, of course, the Cubs with the curse of the Billy Goat hadn't won since 1908. They end up winning, and the Cleveland curse is still there. So part of me is like, it would be nice for Cleveland to maybe make a run and try to break that curse eventually. But I'm going to go with Minnesota. I just think they find a way to repeat as division champs. You still got Pablo Lopez, that nice addition from the Marlins. You've got Byron Buxton, who I think is one of the most reliable center fielders out there. Carlos Correa, he's a veteran. He's been tested in the playoffs. So I'm picking the Twins to repeat, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Guardians end up snatching it because, again, as we've talked about how weak that division is. Let's move now, Steven, to the AL West. This is obviously a very interesting division. Of course, you got the Rangers, the defending champions. You've got the Astros, who have been there the last few years. So I think very likely it's going to be either one of those teams you're picking. Who do you think ends up winning the AL West?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Mariners kind of factor into that a little bit too. But it's for the most part, it's the big two at the top. The battle for Texas, the Rangers and Astros. I'm gonna go Rangers. Obviously, they went on their run last year, and it feels like they're only getting stronger. Like I talked about Evan Carter, but also Wyatt Langford, which that's another debate too. The debate of should the Nationals have taken him over Dylan Cruz, just given how ridiculously Langford's been hitting. He's already going to be on their opening day roster less than a year after being drafted. Um, that we'll get to it, but he's definitely, I feel like, a rookie of the year candidate. Really, both of them. I guess Carter's still eligible for that too. But yeah, so just with those guys being added on top of a lineup that was already really strong, they've got solid pitching. Yeah, I'll go Rangers. I also just don't want to say Astros because I feel like I do that every year. But the Rangers, it feels like it's their time. They've got their World Series, and like they feels like they've only gotten better. So I'll go Rangers.
I agree with you. I'm going with the Rangers. We forget that last year, actually, the Rangers and the Astros had the same record, but the tiebreak went to the Astros. And you could argue, I mean, it helped the Rangers because Texas went undefeated in the playoffs on the road, so it actually probably helped the Rangers that they were the wild card team. But I think they'll end up winning the division this year. I just think, like you've talked about it, the nucleus of their team is still there. Max Scherzer, Nathan Eovaldi, chairing that starting rotation. You've got Corey Seager, the World Series MVP. He's a veteran, a two-time World Series champion. Marcus Semien, Adolis Garcia, one of the best sluggers in the game. Nathaniel Lowe. So I just think the collection of the Rangers together. You talk about Dusty Baker retiring. I think that's going to be a key disadvantage for the Astros potentially late in the year. I think the Rangers end up winning the division. So we agree on 2 out of the 3. We're both picking Baltimore and Texas to win their divisions. I'm going with Minnesota. Steven is going with Cleveland to win the Central. Let's look at the wild cards. Who are your 3 wild cards that you have making the postseason?
Well, so I'll go Astros. There's no way they stay out of the postseason. It's a really strong team. As much as we talk up the Rangers, like we know what the Astros are. So I mean, they'll end up with one. Um, I would say that Tampa will get one. I don't feel as good about their pitching as I normally do. But I mean, they have the track record. They'll figure it out with their pitching. They've got some young talent in their lineup as well. So I'll give them a spot too. And then from there, you're pretty much, I feel like, talking about either the Yankees, the Blue Jays, or the Mariners. Um, I will say the Yankees because I have a feeling that they're gonna probably trade for a pitcher. That's kind of been all the talk, like whether it didn't happen. Yeah, obviously, I mean, he went to the Diamondbacks, but a lot of talk about Jordan Montgomery because he was hanging out there for so long. Blake Snell as well, and they didn't. But it's just hard for me. It's just I think they'll stay in it long enough, and it's hard to imagine that at some point they won't address that. I mean, obviously the lineup they added Juan Soto. Um, I won't even run off the names in their lineup. You know, it's Aaron Judge. This goes on. But so I guess I'll go there. I don't like leaving like Toronto and Seattle out. Because I just am like really fascinated by those two teams, especially Toronto right now. But yeah, so I'll go Tampa, Houston, and the Yankees, I think.
We agree on 2 out of the 3. Actually, I'm going with Tampa. I just think under the Kevin Cash era, they've been a consistent 90-win team. I think they find a way and get back to the postseason. You've got to include the Astros in the field because of their veteran nucleus. Even with Joe Espada being a first-year manager, you still got Jose Altuve. You signed Josh Hader. I think that's going to be a big addition to the bullpen. Framber Valdez, Yordan Alvarez, he's going to be an MVP candidate. Kyle Tucker's great. Justin Verlander ages like wine. Alex Bregman. I just think the core of the Astros you've got to include in the postseason. And then I'm actually going to go with the Blue Jays. I just think, we talk about the Yankees lineup with Juan Soto and Aaron Judge. But, I mean, the Blue Jays are no slouch. You got Vlad Guerrero, Kevin Kiermaier, Justin Turner, a veteran of the postseason, World Series champion. Dalton Varsho is another great young player. Kevin Biggio. I mean, this Toronto team is just fun to watch. Selfishly, I would not like the Rays to make the playoffs because you saw how pathetic their crowds were in the postseason. I'd rather have the Yankees or the Rays, or I shouldn't say the Rays or the Mariners make the postseason. But I think those are going to be who I'm going to go with: the Rays, Blue Jays, and Astros. So we actually agree on 2 of the 3 wild cards, just like we do 2 of the 3 division winners. But I think we all agree that it's the same group of teams we're talking about. We're just picking one out the other. Main reason for not picking the Yankees is I do think, especially if they don't sign a pitcher or trade for a pitcher, that Garrett Cole injury for the first 2 months of the season is going to be difficult to overcome, in my opinion, even with the sluggers. So we'll see what happens there. Let's transition to the NL, Steven, and start with the NL East. Of course, the Nationals division. I know we're both not picking the Nationals to win the division, but who do you have winning this division? I would be shocked if it's someone not named Atlanta.
Then yeah, I mean, I'm not going to surprise you here. Atlanta's been doing it for a few years now. The talent's just ridiculous. They've got one of the better starting pitchers in Spencer Strider. You've got the reigning MVP in Acuna. The lineup as a whole, whether you're talking Matt Olson, Austin Riley, I mean, it's the whole lineup. Like they're just it's unstoppable. I mean, and I'll probably well, we'll see. I think Philly can keep it interesting, but I mean Atlanta. That's one of the most likely teams to get like to 100 wins like every year. It seems like so. Yeah, I won't belabor it. It'll be Atlanta. There's just too much talent there.
I have literally nothing to add other than the Braves did trade for Chris Sale, who I think could be in line for a nice bounce back season. But yeah, there's nothing else to say. The Braves will win the NL East. How about the NL Central? I think this is an interesting division. Of course, you got the Cardinals, who I think disappointed last year. So really for them, they're kind of in a position where it can only go up. You've got the Cubs, who have made some moves. and some of those other teams are entering. The Pirates have some young prospects. So you look at this division, Stephen. Of course, the Brewers are the reigning division champion. Who do you think comes out of the Central?
That's a tough division. And part of the reason why in the past it's been the Brewers, and I've been inclined to pick the Brewers, is Corbin Burns, and he's obviously not there anymore. Um, yeah, I mean there is enough young talent there that they'll stay in the mix. Yeah, I'm kind of just intrigued, like you said. The Cubs have some young talent coming up. Um, they kept Bellinger as well. That's kind of where I'm leaning. I would have said Cincinnati, I think, except that they've had some injuries, especially with their infield. Like Matt McLean, I know is going to be missing a good bit of time. Um, yeah, I think I'll go Cubs. But I think that division will be um, competitive. Like not like there won't be any spectacular teams. I just think kind of like the AL Central, it'll just be pretty tight throughout. But I think I'll go Cubs.
I actually agree with you. I am also going with the Cubs. I just think, first of all, it'd be great for baseball if the Cubs are relevant again and Wrigley Field's back in the postseason. But yeah, I mean, you look at their team. Craig Counsell, by the way, first year as a manager. We talk about Kenny Brooks leaving Virginia Tech. How about Craig Counsell leaving Milwaukee, where he's from? He's from the Wisconsin area. He goes to the rival Cubs. I think in a lot of ways that's actually worse. I know we'll get to Kenny here shortly, but he goes to the Cubs in his first year, the highest paid manager, I believe, too, if I'm not mistaken. You still got Cody Bellinger. You've got Dansby Swanson, Kyle Hendricks, a veteran of that 2016 World Series team. Drew Smiley, Hector Neris, I think, is a nice addition in the bullpen. So along with you still got Ian Happ as well. So I just think I like the way the Cubs are trending. How could I forget Ellie De La Cruz and the Reds? But I just think I like the way Chicago's trending. I agree with you. I am going with the Cubs to win that division. So 2 for 2 there, and I would be incredibly shocked if we're not 3 for 3 when we talk about the NL West. I just think this is another one of those divisions where there's really not much else to talk about other than the Dodgers. So what do you say about that?
Yeah, I mean that's another one of those teams that does it every year, and there's I don't feel like there's even much an argument. They got better. Like they added Shohei Ohtani. Like, I mean, yeah, there's obviously, like you said, at the top, like there's some drama going on there. But I mean, Shohei Ohtani is easily one of the best hitters in the league. You've already got whether it's Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, who actually I saw earlier today just signed what like a 10-year extend or a new 10-year contract
140
for
million.
I
Yep.
think 140 million.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, that's another piece there too. Like that's just another one of those teams. Um, I will say, since we're on the Dodgers, though, I am interested with their middle infield situation. So they're gonna have Mookie Betts as their starting shortstop. Um, I mean, we'll see where that goes. I trust Mookie to be able to do anything he puts his mind to, but that is interesting because he doesn't really have experience at short. Bumping Gavin Lux, I guess, to second. But yeah, I mean, it's the Dodgers division. Um, they're another one of those teams every year. It's around 100 wins. That's I mean, I can't say anyone else. It'll be the Dodgers.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we talk about Otani signing that $700 million deal. They also signed Tyler Glasnow. I mean, I think that's a nice addition, especially as they're waiting for Walker Buehler and Clayton Kershaw to come back from injury. Yeah, there's not much else to say. The Dodgers win that division, and I'm not rooting for the Dodgers, but I am in a sense rooting for them because I think we all agree we want to see Shohei Otani in the playoffs. So figure out a way to get there, and hopefully we'll finally have a chance to see Otani in the playoffs. So 3 for 3, we agree. The Braves, the Cubs, and the Dodgers win their respective divisions. Who do you have in the wild card, Steven? I really think this could be an interesting discussion because I think, unlike the AL, I think there's a couple more teams here you could throw into the discussion for a wild card spot in the NL. So, who are your 3 wild card NL teams?
Yeah, I agree. There are more teams in that middle tier in the NL. I teased Philly before, so I'll just say now. I think that's a team that'll be around that 90 win mark. So I think that'll be one of them. I'll go yeah, I'll go Arizona again as another one of the wild cards. I think that's kind of just an up and coming team as we saw in the playoffs. And then from there, I mean, there are kind of a lot of teams to pick from. I've been really interested in the Giants offseason. Obviously, I mean there are a lot of guys they added, whether it's a Matt Chapman, Jorge Soler as well, a great power bat there, Snell. So they'll definitely be in that conversation. Whereas the past few years they've been, I mean, definitely not. Um, I mean the Marlins are interesting. The Mets will probably be better, although I mean who knows? Like it's one of those teams where you feel like they'll probably make a trade, and then I mean, especially into next year, spend money. And we talked about kind of the whole Central, whether it's Milwaukee, Cincinnati, St. Louis, they'll all kind of be in that mix. Um, I've been rambling to buy myself time for this third wild card here. I guess I'll go. I guess I'll go Milwaukee. Um, I don't feel super strongly in any direction about those teams though. Um, but yeah, so the Phillies and the Diamondbacks I feel good about, and I'll give the NL Central a second team, and I think it'll probably be Milwaukee.
We actually disagree on two of the three teams, believe it or not, Steven. I'm going with the Phillies. I agree with you. All the former Nats. I mean, Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber. You throw in Alec Boehm. I think that's a pretty solid team. They've been testing the playoffs. No disagreement there. I'm going to go with the Giants to make the playoffs. Shout out to my guy, Corey Van Dyke, a big Giants fan. But you talked about it, the free agent acquisitions. Jorge Soler, Matt Chapman, Blake Snell. I think Logan Webb is a contender for the Cy Young this year. You've also got Robbie Ray as well to add in there in the pitching staff from a trade. You've got the young guys like Alex Cobb or David VR. Shout out to David VR. I covered him when he was in Wisconsin when I was the voice of the lacrosse loggers. Bob Melvin's in his first year. So I kind of like the way the Giants are trending. I'm going to pick them to make the playoffs. And I'm going to go with the Cardinals. I just think that the team they have and the way last year went, it can only go up from here. And you talked about it since he's got the injuries. Chicago, even though we both picked him to win the division, they're kind of unproven. The Brewers, I think, will have a new identity to create with Craig Counsell leaving. The Pirates are a young team, so they're going to have some work to do. I'm going to go with the Cardinals. I just think you've got Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt leading that lineup. That's always a formidable lineup. You bring back Matt Carpenter, who was there before as a veteran, as well as Lance Lynn in free agency. You've got Lars Nootbaar, who I think stole the show in a lot of ways in the World Baseball Classic. You acquire Sonny Gray via trade. So I'm going the Cardinals. So I don't know what you think about those. I know you mentioned the Giants and Cardinals, but I'm picking them even over the reigning NL champion D-backs to make the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I think those are definitely teams in the discussion for me. You almost sold me on the Giants a little bit, but yeah, I think both of those teams I think will definitely be in the mix. The question for me with the Cardinals and why I lean no is that the last couple years, but also going into this year, like the pitching is always kind of a question to me. Like you said, they got Sonny Gray, they got Lance Lynn. I never exactly know with him like I mean, he had there are ups and downs with him, and Gray will probably be solid, but like I don't know. My gut says their pitching will struggle a little bit, which is most of the reason why I left them out. But no, like I think those teams will definitely be in the mix there. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see which one of us ends up on the right end there.
How about Cy Young? Who do you think ends up winning the Cy Young award in both leagues?
Um, I think I think in the NL I actually picked Corbin Burns last year. Um, So I might just do it again. I do just think he's a really good pitcher. And there's something cooking there in Baltimore. I feel like it's just an exciting place to be right now, and obviously he's got the stuff every year. So I think I'll go there in the AL, and then in the NL, I think I'll bet on myself a little bit because I picked him in fantasy and say Spencer Strider, one of the best strikeout pitchers in the league. Definitely young up and comer there. He struggled a little bit last year, but down the stretch, I think in particular. But I mean, again, just this stuff he has, the strikeout stuff, like he's just tough to hit. And again, it's just another really good team there. So yeah, I'll go Burns in the AL, Strider in the NL.
I agree with you on one half of that. I am also going with Corbin Burns to win the AL. I just think if the Orioles are going to be one of the best teams in the league, I think they're going to need a guy like Corbin Burns to be their ace, I should say, and carry their pitching staff. So I think he gets it done in the AL. And then the end, I'm going Logan Webb because I was already on this Giants train. I think they're a trendy team, a team to watch for a wild card spot. I think they're going to need a guy like Logan Webb to be their ace and lead them to the postseason. So I'm going Burns in the AL, Logan Webb for the Giants in the NL. But I think, Strider is a good pick. I don't think there's really any wrong predictions there. How about MVP? Who ends up taking it away in the AL and NL? I think we both predicted Shohei Ohtani to win the AL MVP last year, which, again, that's not really going out on the limb there. He's an incredible player, but he is not pitching this year because of Tommy John surgery. So I think that probably, he could still win it based on his bat. He's that good of a player, but I think that was the appeal of him, was that he could do it on the mound and he could do it at the plate. I think that probably maybe takes him out of the conversation here, especially when you also factor in he's going to be playing with Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. I mean, that's a heck of a lineup, 1, 2, 3 punch there. So who do you have winning the MVP in both leagues?
AL, I just really like Jordan Alvarez. Um, just for a couple years now, he's basically been the Juan Soto of the AL, and now obviously Soto's in the AL. But just a great bat. Again, it's another one of those teams. It's loaded. He's really the anchor of that lineup. Um, so yeah, I'll go Alvarez there. Um, NL. Trying to think who really would stand out there. I don't want to go Otani. Just to your point, he definitely could. But some of the appeal there was just with the two-way aspect there, being as strong a pitcher as he was on top of the hitting. Plus, I mean, it's almost hard to pick between like him, Mookie, even like a Freddie Freeman. It's one of those situations where almost like stealing votes from each other. Um, I think I will go. Um, how about that's kind of contradicting myself. I was gonna say Austin Riley, but it's kind of the same situation there. He's got Acuna. Um, no, I'll do it. I'll go Austin Riley. I really like his bat. I've been high on that ever since coming up as a prospect. But yeah, I'm kind of just feeling a real, I guess, breakout season. He's already broken out, but just going to the next level there, becoming just one of the best sluggers in the league in a lineup that's just that loaded. He can pick up the production there as far as scoring runs, driving in runs, just because that lineup's as strong as it is. So yeah, I'll go Alvarez and
You took the words right out of my mouth with Jordan Alvarez. I think honestly, you could make a really legitimate case outside of Shohei Ohtani. He probably should have been the AL MVP the last couple of years. I think now that Ohtani's in the NL, he's going to have a great opportunity to really prove himself. Not really prove himself, but showcase why he's such a great player. So completely agree with you. I'm going Jordan Alvarez in the AL. And the NL, I'm sticking with the same team, but I got to go with Ronald Acuna Jr. again. I just think Steven, you can honestly make an argument, and that I think he's probably the most exciting player in the game right now. I mean, obviously you've got Ohtani on when he's able to pitch on both sides of the game, but I think outside of that, I mean, Ronald Acuna, the way he can do it on the base paths, defensively at the plate, he's as exciting a box office of a player we have in the game. So I'm going with Acuna to win the MVP, which would be a second year in a row. But we agree, a lot of great candidates for both MVP and Cy Young. I think it's going to be a great race to watch. World Series, put your money where your mouth is. Before the season starts, opening day is tomorrow, as of this recording, the 28th of March. Who plays in the World Series and who ends up winning the World Series? What is your prediction?
I'm gonna say that this year is the Orioles' year to get there. I'll go with them in the AL. Yeah, I mean, it's just a change up a little bit. But like I said, like they do have their ace now. That lineup's only going to get stronger as you get, whether as you're adding a Jackson Holiday and guys like that from their prospect pool, but also just guys that are already there a year or two in, just gaining more experience, more postseason experience. I think that'll start to pay dividends for them. So I'll go with them in the AL. And then in the NL, um, I will go. It's always kind of a toss up for me between the Braves and the Dodgers. Um, I will go. I think Dodgers. Yeah, I'll go Dodgers. Because obviously, like you said, you added a Tyler Glass now. You'll get some of those starting pitchers back that are a little banged up. Hopefully, they can stay healthy because that sometimes has been an issue. Um, but yeah, and then the lineup, like we've talked about, is just super strong. Them and the Braves kind of both the same thing there. But I'm gonna say that I'm also kind of just hoping for, like you were talking about, Otani in the playoffs. Just get as much of that as possible. But yeah, I just think the heart of that lineup is really strong. Um, and I will go. Honestly, I think I'm going to go Orioles. I mean, it kind of just feels like one of these years is just going to be their year. They're just top to bottom. It's from just the talent they have in the majors now, the talent that's coming, the talent that's just gotten there. They've added their ace. Um, Kind of just feels like their year. And like you said, adding Craig Kimbrell on top of Batista there. That's a really strong back of the bullpen there. That's always a little bit of an issue with the Dodgers. So I will give the Orioles that edge. So I'll go Orioles and Dodgers and pick the Orioles to win it.
Steven, I was gonna try to build this up and pick my two teams and then make my champion, but you took the words right out of my mouth. I'm picking the Orioles to win it all. I think I agree with you. It's their year. And I like the way they've kind of, and maybe you're not supposed to say this as a Nats fan, but I really like the way they've built up their team through their farm system. I mean, Adley Rutschman, Jackson Holiday, when it comes up, Gunnar Henderson. I mean, these are homegrown guys they've built through the farm system. I really like that clashing up against, say, a Dodgers or a Braves. I'm going with the Braves. I just think that look, the Dodgers have flamed out of the first round, the NL Division Series the last couple of years with the Padres loss and last year the D-backs, two division foes. I think the Braves they've lost to the Phillies last couple of years, but I think that they've been more competitive. So I trust. I think their nucleus around Ronald Acuna and Matt Olson a little bit better. So I'm going with the Braves to make the World Series. And look, we don't know how far this Otani thing is going to go. I mean, if this is a distraction, don't discount that as something that could affect the Dodgers. I don't think they'll. I think they'll win the regular season. But if this is something that this is lingering for a while, they'll win the division. But I do think it could be a question mark come postseason time. So I have Orioles and Braves. I agree with you. I'm going with Baltimore. I think this means Baltimore is going to suck, Steven, because I think I remember if it was last year or maybe the year before, we both picked the Mets, but we know what happened. So I think Orioles fans, if the Orioles suck, we're sorry because we both picked them, and last time we did that, it ended up working against the Mets. So
Yeah, no, that's funny. I think we did both pick the Mets last year, so yeah, we'll see. But yeah, it does. Like we said, it kind of just feels like the Orioles year, which it felt like the Mets year last year. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, no real disagreements with you there. I certainly the Braves are right in that mix there with me as well.
for sure. Well, that's a great discussion on baseball, Steven. I always appreciate your insight talking about the Nats because you follow them as closely as anybody. You really should be a beat writer. I mean, you're basically Mark Zuckerman 2.0 in my opinion. So someone out there that needs a guy covering the Nats, hire Stephen Newman. He's the man. And of course, talking about their expectations in baseball overall, it's always a pleasure to do that. I would be remiss though, Stephen, if we did not end this podcast talking about college basketball. Of course, we're in the Sweet 16 rounds of both the men's and women's game. But the biggest news that we have to talk about is, of course, about our alma mater, Virginia Tech women's basketball. Kenny Brooks, a longtime head coach, he was there for what 7, 8 years. I think he came in my sophomore year, which would have been your junior year. So he's, I mean, really the last coach. I think. Well, Chef, I think was there when we were undergrads, but one of the last coaches. The main point is that was there that got hired while we were students. He ends up going to Kentucky. Of course, a great resume for Kenny at Virginia Tech. Took the Hokies to a Final Four last year. I think they were going to make another run had Liz Kelly not gotten injured in that last regular season game against UVA. Instead, they lose in the second round to Baylor a couple days ago. Uh, it's not been reported exactly how much he's accepted at Kentucky, but I think it's clear he's a top 10 highest paid coach. He's also a top 3 highest paid SEC coach behind Dawn Staley and Kim Mulkey. Obviously, there's a broader conversation going on about Virginia Tech not only being a stepping stone job. We saw it happen with Buzz Williams and now Kenny Brooks, but also do they have the money to compete NIL wise with these SEC schools, because the SEC, they've got a much more favorable TV rights deal, and that's kind of funneling a lot of um, this money that they have. There was a big discussion whether or not they were going to buy out John Calipari's contract for 34 million, but they ended up announcing that they're keeping him today. I don't know what your thoughts on Steven on this. I mean, I think obviously disappointment would, if you didn't say you were disappointed, it would be a lie, because obviously we all wanted Kenny Brooks to stay, and I don't know that really anyone had thought he was ever going to leave until a week ago when these rumors started flying. I just think that, first of all, you can't blame a guy for wanting to for doing what he thought was best for his family and himself professionally. Because you think about it, Kitley's gone, Amor's likely gone. I don't think she's going to Kentucky. He just have to start over again with all these expectations at Virginia Tech. He can go to Kentucky, where they've got more NIL money. They've got better facilities, a standalone women's basketball arena. And I think something that's underrated here is I think he can honestly build this thing in peace, because all that school cares about is men's basketball. They suck all the energy out of every other sport. So I think honestly he can kind of go in there and start building this thing one by one quietly before I think he builds out a winning product. And he goes to the SEC, can compete more directly with Dawn Staley and Kim Mulkey, really gained that national recognition. And last thing I say before I throw this to you is I really don't think this is anyone's fault. People were trying to blame Whit Babcock, Virginia Tech. From everything that's been reported, I think Virginia Tech made a very good offer. Babcock said earlier today in a press conference that I think it was just a matter of Kenny wanted a new challenge. So look, Virginia Tech offered the best deal they could. Kenny Brooks, I think, wanted a new challenge, and I think that's the end of the story. So I'm already in a lot of ways over Kenny Brooks leaving. Obviously, I think the program is going to be in a rebuilding phase, and we'll see when they end up hiring as the replacement. But I think, look, he wanted a new challenge. Virginia Tech did what they could given their limitations, and I think we just have to move on.
Yeah, yeah, that was tough when I first saw that news. Even the news that Kentucky was strongly considering him, but especially now that he's gone, just because and I'm sure you kind of feel the same way, Kenny. Even aside from the fact that it's hurting Tech because they're losing a great coach, he was also just a great guy. Really good guy to get to know. Kind of showed um, all of us that were in the sports journalism field there as students, kind of showed us the ropes. It's kind of the first into to getting into that space. But was a great guy to learn from there. But again, just a great guy. And to your point, he kind of is what built up the women's team there from not a whole lot to a Final Four team last year, and very well could have been again this year had Liz Kitley there not gotten injured at the end of the season and been done for the year. Um, yeah, I don't. I agree with you. I don't think that it was like mishandled in any way on Tech's side, and I understand why Kenny would do what he did. It did though feel like, to me at least, he kind of was it was home to him basically. He was a Virginia guy through and through, and he'd built up what he did at Tech, and it kind of felt, and maybe it was just too good to be true, but that he would stay. Similar to the way things are with Mike Young on the men's side, or even Brent Pry in football as well, kind of the same sort of thing. Um, so I I was a little surprised. I mean, I'm surprised that he's leaving. Once I saw that Kentucky was coming for him, like the reality is that the SEC just has more money to give, like across the board. They've got ESPN on their side too, so like there's just more money there. So I'm sure that's a big reason why he did leave. And again, like you said, just a new challenge. He kind of built Tech as far as it was going to go. And even though it felt like he was a Virginia guy, like the reality is maybe he did just want another challenge. So I get it, and I think I've picked up as well that I don't know this, but that it did seem like Tech they didn't lowball him. Kentucky just had more, and like Tech. It's always an interesting question with Tech too, and any college really, but at Tech specifically. The whole the whole NIL deal. I mean, we're even seeing it on the men's side too now. Like there are a bunch of guys that have gone into the portal because the reality is there's probably better NIL packages elsewhere. But Yeah, the way things are at Tech, it's a football school, and football is on the up now, and they're gonna dump all the resources into football. And if that means that maybe they got to cut corners with other sports, like that's kind of just the way it's going to be. And it honestly makes sense that they're doing that, but it doesn't take away from the fact that losing someone like Kenny, it hurts. And the team will now kind of go back to square one probably, because like you said too, like Liz Kitley's gone, Kayla King will be gone, Georgia Amore will probably, I guess, go pro. Even though I know she does have another year of eligibility, but I mean, kind of proven all you're going to at this point. So I mean, we'll see where that goes. But regardless, yeah, back to the drawing board there. Somewhat like it was when Buzz Williams left, although there was still some talent there on the men's side. I'm not exactly sure what they'll do on the women's side because there's not a ton left. Um, other than Strack looked really good in the tournament, filling intricately. Yeah, it stings, but I get it. I don't think anyone did anything that was wrong. It's just one of those realities. Once you're that good a coach somewhere, and there's a better opportunity, especially if it's in the SEC, like it's kind of just a harsh reality for Tech and a lot of schools across the country. Um, but I mean, they'll figure it out. They'll hire somebody. I saw that Kenny's old assistant there, Sean Poppy, got the job at Clemson. That was kind of the natural fit to replace him. I felt like, but I, I'll put my trust in Whit Babcock and company to find the right person to take over. But I mean, it was tough news to see though, for sure. That combined with the fact just knowing that all the players that were going to be leaving that were leading the charge there for the Hokies. But I mean, we'll see. I'm I guess cautiously optimistic that Babcock will find the right person, but they're tough shoes to fill though, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, look, I don't think that you can expect loyalty from anyone in this day and age in college athletics. I mean, I think Tech fans get spoiled because Frank Beamer stayed here for 30 years. And I think that's a little, again, you got to look at it in that one unique case because Frank went to Virginia Tech. He was from the area. I mean, this truly was his home. And who's not to say? I mean, if he was in this era with NIL and the amount of obscene money that Big Ten and SEC schools can offer, that he wouldn't have left. I'm not so sure he would have stayed 30 years in this day and age. And so, I trust Whit Babcock's record. I mean, think about it. He hired Mike Young, who won a ACC tournament title for the first time in history. You got Buzz Williams, who took the Hokies to 3 straight NCAA tournament appearances and a Sweet 16. He promoted Tony Roby wrestling. He also hired John Sheff and Pete Demore. So I think that I trust his track record to hire a right coach, and we'll see what they end up doing. And I think you touched on it, Steven. I think there's going to be a whole lot of pressure on football to win 9 to 10 games next year because clearly you can tell the administration is putting everything in football. I think there's a long-term goal of trying to make it into the SEC or Big Ten before really we become a two conference college football league, which I think this is where it's headed. So I don't know what you think about that. I think there's going to be immense pressure on Brent Pry and that football team to win 9 to 10 games at least next year.
Yeah, no, agreed. We're kind of back in that territory where if Tech's not competing for the ACC, it's going to feel like a disappointment. Just the way things ended the end of last season. Yeah, that's kind of where we're at with all the talent coming back as well. Yeah, I agree there. And yeah, it is kind of the same issue though. I feel like that we ran into with Kenny now is, and I mean with Buzz Williams before too, even before we were headed towards this whole two conference college sports type of situation. But like you almost don't want Fry to have that much success because you feel like if he does, and if the Hokies don't get picked up by the Big Ten or SEC, that he's just going to leave and we're going to have to start all over again. And we've seen how that can go. The Fuente regime, as well as it started, it fizzled out pretty quickly. So if you have the wrong guy, that can happen. And if you're not in the Big Ten or SEC there, like it could, I don't know what it'll look like. It could get pretty dark. But yeah, no, agreed. The athletic department as a whole is definitely dumping all their resources into football, and again, it makes sense. But if they're going to do that, then the football team's gotta get to that 8, 9, 10, wherever, win territory there, be competing for the ACC, and if they can continue that year over year, we'll see where it goes as far as joining one of the big two conferences there. But yeah, it's just a really weird time in college sports in general. It's just weird that if you're not in one of those two conferences, it feels like the goal basically is to get there. Not like we're not even talking about like winning the conference, going to the playoff, all of that, winning the championship. It's literally the future focus. You just have to be in one of the big conferences. But like that's kind of just where we're at. And I mean it stinks, but yeah, that's just where we are. But at least for now, Tech's got among the best returning rosters in the ACC. Like even like Florida State lost a lot. Um, yeah, like Clemson kind of is what they are. Miami, you know. Um, but yeah, I mean it's kind of up for grabs in the ACC there in football. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But it is just a weird climate in college football and college sports as a whole. Just like get to the Big Ten or SEC. But yeah, so I mean, hopefully we don't run into this same situation that the women's team did with Kenny Brooks. But also, even if that were to happen, it would mean that the football team did pretty well for a year or two there prior. So I mean, I'll take it if that's what it's got to be. But yeah, just a really weird time in college sports. That's my kind of number one thought, I guess. Everything surrounding tech sports, but yeah, for now, just appreciate what we got. Hope for the best this football season, and see where it goes.
Yeah, and I think that case that Clemson and Florida State are taking to court, whether or not they can successfully sue the ACC and get out of their TV rights contract, I think that'll be very important to watch and could obviously spur a lot of things into action. Stephen, you've been so gracious with your time. Before I let you go for the podcast, really quick, who are your Final Four and champion predictions for both men's and women's? I'm just gonna stick with the champion in women's. I don't think it's very hot take. I'm gonna say South Carolina wins it. I think they're going to beat LSU. I don't think, I mean, look, Caitlin Clark is fantastic, but I think LSU's got a better team. I think they're going to find a way to make it, rather first beat Iowa in their bracket and make it to the championship, but I don't think anyone's beating South Carolina this year. And then on the men's side, I actually still have my Final Four intact. I have UNC, Purdue, Houston, so 3-1 seeds. And then I had Illinois. I think, I just was like, it's college basketball. I don't want to go with the champion, defending champion, even though UConn probably is the best team in the country. But I really think Illinois is going to get it done against Iowa State and beat UConn as well. So I had those four teams. I had UNC over Purdue in my final. I think that I like the combination of R.J. Davis and Armando Bacot leading the way. And I love the way the ACC has proven the haters wrong because I'm not counting the UVA game. They're undefeated in the NCAA tournament. And really I mean, this has been happening the last couple of years where you've seen the ACC really prove the haters wrong and do well in the tournament. So I'm going South Carolina winning it on the women's side, UNC, North Carolina winning it on the men's side. How about you?
Yeah, I'll agree with you on the women's side. I think it's just hard to go against South Carolina. Um, as far as the men's side goes, I mean, I had a couple brackets and they're both pretty busted, but I did at least have UNC as my champion in one of them, so I'll stick with that. Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, I can't even go off a bracket I had. They're in shambles. I tried to get cute and pick upsets and all of that. This year just wasn't the year to do that. Um, I will differ from you and go with UConn in that region. So UNC, um, Yeah, I guess I'll go Houston. God, I can't just go all one seeds though. That's the problem. I don't really feel it with Purdue though. And maybe I'm just off on this, but I feel like in general in the tournament, it having the best big man isn't what wins you games. Um, so I will differ there. I'm trying to remember what I did in that region. Um,
You got
but
Tennessee as the 2 seed, maybe Tennessee.
yeah, I could see Tennessee. Was that the region that Kentucky was in, or is
No,
that the?
they were in the Houston region.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, yeah, because I know I had Kentucky. Um, yeah, I guess I would go Tennessee. I think that's what I did. But yeah, see, I had Kentucky being the other team on that side. So I guess I'll go. I guess I'll go Houston now. So UNC and Houston in the championship, UNC as the winner, and then UConn and Tennessee as my other two.
Perfect. Well, as we know, it's been an exciting tournament. I think it's the first time in a long time that the 1 and 2 seeds made the Sweet 16. So, like you saying, it's hasn't been as many upsets this year, although we did have some notable ones like Yale and Oakland. So we still had our mix, but I think a lot of people, even though they like the upsets, the Cinderella runs, at the end of the day, we want the best teams kind of in those later stages. So I do think if it ends up being the 4-1 seeds, or you sprinkle in a 2 seed, or obviously, UConn's a defending champion. I think it will be still an entertaining Final Four, and we'll all be looking forward to it. Steven, man, this is always such a pleasure getting a chat with you about the Nats, about baseball. We sprinkled in some Kenny Brooks and Virginia Tech, as well as the men's college basketball, women's college basketball Final Fours. Thanks so much, man. It's always a pleasure, and we'll do it again in October, previewing the postseason. But excited to see the Nats and the rest of the Major League Baseball teams starting the opening day regular season tomorrow.
Sounds great. I always appreciate being on. Have a great time, and we'll circle back once MLB postseason time comes around. Always
Well,
enjoy it though.
for sure. Well, thank you so much to Stephen Newman, technical writer, a sports writer for Dulles District, DC Sportsman, and Virginia Tech class of 2018 for joining me on the latest edition of the Post with BP. Enjoy opening day starting for the MLB tomorrow, folks. Enjoy the Final Fours, college basketball tournaments with the men's and women's. And interesting to see what happens. We'll see what happens with Virginia Tech as they kind of move in the post Kenny Brooks era. Again, thank you so much to Stephen Newman for joining me on the latest edition of the Post with BP. I'm your host, Billy Parvatam. Thanks so much to everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.